Firouzja opens with the queen's pawn, staking a central claim. Carlsen mirrors with d5, the classical reply, fighting for central equality from the very first move. The queen's gambit. Firouzja challenges black's center immediately. Carlsen responds with e6, supporting the d5 pawn, and preparing to develop the dark squared bishop, a solid, principled reply. Both sides develop their knights to their most natural squares, controlling central squares and building toward castling. Firouzja completes the three-knight setup. Carlsen's interesting h6 is a flexible, slightly offbeat choice. It stops white from playing bishop g5 and pins the knight f6. While it seems like a slow move, it's a Carlsen specialty. Firouzja plays a 3, a Catalan-style idea that prepares b4. Carlsen strikes back in the center with c5, challenging the d4 pawn and opening the position. He's not content to sit and wait. Firouzja exchanges in the center. Carlsen recaptures with the e-pawn rather than the knight, creating a symmetrical pawn structure with an isolated d-pawn for black. This is a well-trodden pawn structure that gives black active piece play in exchange for a slight long-term weakness. Firouzja develops the bishop actively to f4. Carlsen develops his other knight, reinforcing the center and preparing to challenge with bishop d6 or bishop g4, a solid multi-purpose move for white. Carlsen plays a 6, preventing knight b5 from jumping in and preparing queenside expansion. Firouzja develops quietly toward kingside castling. Carlsen plays the key move 9, c4, locking the queenside pawn structure and claiming space. Firouzja centralizes powerfully with knight e5, occupying the strong outpost in the heart of the board. Carlsen immediately challenges it with bishop d6, preparing to trade off the powerful knight or force it to retreat. Both kings find safety. The stage is set for the real battle to begin with both sides fully mobilized. Firouzja repositions the bishop to g3, where it covers the e5 square and eyes the queen side. Carlsen actively places his bishop on f5, competing for the g3 diagonal and putting pressure on the pawn on c2. A bold, aggressive idea from Firouzja. Sharp f4 reinforces the knight f5 and prepares a kingside pawn advance. Carlsen retreats his bishop to e7, staying flexible and not allowing f4 to f5 ideas to crash through immediately. Firouzja repositions the bishop to f3, a more aggressive haggle. Carlsen places the rook on c8, aiming it at the c-file, a natural home given the locked c4 pawn and future pressure on c2. Firouzja counters on the c-file with his rook. Carlsen launches the queenside advance. b5 threatens to push b4, drive away the c3 knight, and open lines for the rooks. The battle is now on two fronts. Firouzja retreats the bishop to e1 to avoid being traded and to reroute it. Carlsen presses forward with p4. The pawn storm is in full swing, and he's not stopping. Firouzja captures. Then Carlsen recaptures with the bishop. Carlsen has given up a pawn for excellent piece activity and long-term pressure. Firouzja activates his bishop with bishop h4, adding pressure on f6 and the kingside. Carlsen makes a key decision, taking on c3, giving up the bishop pair to shatter white's pawn structure. This train changes the pawn landscape significantly. Firouzja must take with the p-pawn. Carlsen places the queen on d6. Firouzja unpins the a-pawn by moving the rook. Carlsen lands a knight on a4, a powerful outpost. The knight on a4 is a monster piece, supported by the d5 pawn, and cannot easily be challenged by white's pawns. He grabs the a6 pawn with his rook, entering deep into enemy territory. Carlsen responds with f6, attacking the knight f5 and forcing it to move. The position is now extremely complex and double-edged. Firouzja trades off Carlsen's powerful e4 knight. Carlsen recaptures with the bishop, keeping the bishop on an active diagonal and maintaining some piece activity despite the simplification. Firouzja hops the knight to g4, targeting the h6 pawn and preparing to create kingside threats. Carlsen calmly retreats the queen to d7, getting out of the pin while keeping an eye on the a-rook. It's deep in black's territory. The knight retreats to f2, targeting the e4 bishop and preparing to reinforce the kingside attack. Carlsen repositions his knight to a7, a more flexible square from which it can jump to various parts of the board. Firouzja centralizes the queen, adding pressure to the e4 bishop and preparing to recapture it. Carlsen uses his rook aggressively. Rook c6 challenges the a6 rook and threatens to trap it or trade it on favorable terms. The rooks come off. Firouzja's rook adventure on a 6 comes to an end as it is exchanged. Carlsen recaptures with the queen, now active on c6 and eyeing both sides of the board. Firouzja finally eliminates the powerful e4 bishop with his knight. Carlsen recaptures with the d-pawn, creating that passed e4 pawn that will be a significant factor. Firouzja activates his last rook, aiming to use it on the a-file. Carlsen centralizes the knight to d5. Firouzja retreats the bishop to e1, eyeing a future trip to f5 to challenge the knight d5. Carlsen plays rook d8, bringing the last rook into the game and adding pressure on the b-file against white's c-pawns. Firouzja advances the f-pawn aggressively, sharp, threatening to open the queenside and create maiden threats. Carlsen's getting the king off the g8 square and waiting to see how Firouzja's queenside attack develops. Firouzja swings a queen to g4, targeting the e4 pawn and pressuring g7. Carlsen retreats the queen to d7, defending the e4 pawn and eyeing a possible queen swap or repositioning. Firouzja captures the e4 pawn, material balance restored. Carlsen responds with the excellent rook e8, pinning the queen and forcing Firouzja to deal with the rook on an active open file. Firouzja keeps the queen active on the kingside diagonal. Carlsen returns the king to g8. Firouzja pushes a4, trying to create a passed pawn. Carlsen responds brilliantly with knight e3, key move. Firouzja moves the queen to f3. Carlsen continues the knight tour. Firouzja defends the rook. Carlsen's knight gances to a3. Firouzja reactivates the bishop to g3, preparing to support the e4 to e5 push. Carlsen's knight lands on b5. Firouzja advances the passed pawn to a5. Critical. Miss threatens to push to e6, creating a monster passed pawn deep in black's position. Magnus resigns here, with the position still in full tension. Carlsen's knight b5 is well placed, but the e5 pawn is dangerous. A fascinating game that captures the dynamic, double-edged chess both players thrive in.